I'm bummed that you're not in the guillotine anymore. But
Yeah,
Basil's crushing it. The,
Basil is
the
crushing.
Dallas Cowboys
Hey,
lineup.
what's up?
Or
No.
those Cowboys
Yeah,
are a rule.
yeah, I'm
Brett,
fine.
are you a fantasy football player, Brett?
I'm not a fantasy football player. I tried one time, once basketball season started, I lost track, so can't keep up.
We did with like the Get in the Game 101 crew, we did a guillotine league this year where there's 18 teams, and then every week whoever has the lowest score, they're done. Like they kick them out of the league,
Nice.
and then at the end of the year, there's one team left. So
Nice.
anyway,
Cutthroat.
Mikey B got his head chopped off this week.
I
So
heard,
I would consider it a blessing. One thing off my
I honestly, I was I wanted to go a little further, but I like honestly not having to play fantasy football is fine with me too.
no, we needed you. We're gonna miss you in the league.
Well, I had the best record the year before when we were doing the normal one, and then I won last year. So somebody else gets to do really well this year.
Brett, I was at church last night, and the gal I sit next to, she went to Taylor. I was like, I run into Taylor people everywhere. You guys
Wow,
scour the world.
it's wild. I was in Seattle one time, like walking down the market, the little fish market there, and I saw someone with a Taylor University soccer shirt on. It's like, what are the odds?
I I've never, yeah, I've like me and my sisters talk about it because we're like, while world travelers, and anywhere we go, we meet people from Taylor. So
Wow.
that was
School of
wild.
2,000 people, but show up everywhere.
Yeah, you guys are out there. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. But here with Coach Brett. Always excited to see Brett. Me and Brett met up the ranks of the video coordinator world back in the day when he was with the Phoenix Suns, and then Brett has had quite the journey since. He has an amazing story of how he got into the league, and then just the different roles he's been in since. So, Brett, do you want to dive into a little bit of just your journey?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. Good to see some familiar faces and excited to hang with you guys for a little bit. As I was preparing for this, I was kind of reflecting on my story and really think it's remarkable that I'm here talking to you in this capacity because believe it or not, when I was in high school, college, and setting my mind on becoming a coach, my mom actually tried to talk me out of it. And her argument was, you've only seen the good side of coaching. See, my dad was a college coach and had a legendary career, 30 plus years at the same school, more championships than we can count on two hands, more Hall of Fames than we can count on one hand, got his name inscribed on the court. Uh, the kind of career like every coach just dreams of having. And this is the world I grew up in. Um, But I can honestly say now, after 16 years of coaching, 12 in the pros, 4 in college, I have seen the dark side. And I can go to my mom and tell her the words that every mom lives a whole life to hear from their son. Mom, you were right. You were right. I have seen owners twice take over a successful franchise and drop a grenade in the middle of it. I have seen front offices get swept up in the emotion of the moment, make a rash decision that took us off plan and completely destroyed our future. I've seen head coaches pay the price for that decision. I've been a part of staffs that have uh, fractured, split down the middle. I've seen coups form on staff and overthrow the regime. I've seen players, teams with playoff aspirations on the doorstep of the playoffs completely disintegrate right before they're about to reach their goal. Um, yeah, I've seen how bad it can be. And I've also seen how good it can be from my dad's experiences and some of my own. So now, after 16 years of coaching, have launched out into my own business called Champion Shift. where I help coaches build high-performing teams. And a number of tools and resources and programs we use to help them. But taking all those experiences and insights and trying to find a better way to do it, because the business, as John and I can attest to, can chew you up and spit you out and be really, really difficult. And building a high performing team is really, really fragile. I know this conversation is around the preseason and training camp and what's going on this time of year. And I find this time of year a really important part of the team building process, because you are laying the foundation for the whole season. And I'd be interested to hear, you guys have probably been talking about this over the last couple of weeks, but this phase of the season has changed so much, even since I started in the league in 2010. Because it used to be after training camp or after summer league, everyone would go home, and you'd have like all of August was a big vacation for the NBA. And then shortly after Labor Day, players would start trickling back in, first the young guys, and then as you got later into September, the veterans would start showing up, and you'd start training camp and go on your way. And now, and I think this is true for most teams, after summer league, it's like a 2-week break, and then August is workshops, optionatory workshops, right? Optional but mandatory, at least for the young guys. And they're in there all month and doing individual workouts, small group workouts, playing pickup. And then as the school year starts up, the veterans who have kids are back in town because their kids are back in school. And so what used to be maybe a 2-week run up to training camp and then 2 weeks to preseason has now turned into this like 2-month ramp up in preparation for the season, which has its pros and cons. But from a coach's perspective, you're testing out new material, trying out new drills, introducing new terminology, and really getting to prepare yourself for the season. And so from my mindset, as you're talking about building teams, which I'm helping people do now, there's 3 really crucial things that are happening in this moment, in this time period leading up to the start of the season. And I think every head coach, the veteran ones know how to do this well. The younger ones are learning it. But the first thing that's happening is they are communicating a vision for the season, for what the team will look like, maybe the goals or aspirations they have, but really their vision for how the team will operate. And what used to be a big prepared presentation the first day of training camp, which may still happen, but has now become a drip of information over the course of 2 months. And so it's no longer just one big team, hoorah moment, but it's slowly, individually over the course of the month, communicating your vision to the players and then aligning the individual people to that vision. And what's happened now is coaching staffs have gotten so big that the head coach is almost more responsible for leading the staff than he is leading the players. Not saying he doesn't have relationships with the players and he's not in front of the players talking, but even I live in Phoenix, so tuned in with the Suns and their day-to-day headlines. And even Jordan Ott was like adjusting to the role of head coach and realizing, man, I don't get as much time with the players as I used to as an assistant. And so the head coach has got to communicate the vision to his assistants because they're the ones communicating it to the individual players. And so you're communicating a vision for the team and you're aligning the individuals to that vision. The second thing that's happening right now that is crucial for setting up the culture for the year is no vision gets accomplished without infrastructure supporting it. The vision doesn't happen just because you hope it does, just because you want it to. The vision happens because it's built on structure and systems. So systems are going to be their daily routines. That's one of the big parts of this September timeframe is you're starting to introduce the rhythm of daily activities that the players are going to get used to. And this establishes your rhythms and routines for the year. And ideally, those are built in accordance with the vision, right? This includes your staff meeting routines, your practice plan routines. It's your style of play, your offense and defensive systems. All these are things are supporting what the vision will be. It also includes the structure. In corporate world, they'd call it the organizational chart. But every team has a hierarchy. On the roster, on the coaching staff, but getting very clear about what that hierarchy is. And I think maybe it's a college way to say like, hey, we have 30 practices and we'll compete it out and you can earn your spot and we'll figure out the hierarchy. And that's not really how it operates in the pros. Like there's very clear who's number one, who's number two, but it's not always communicated very clearly. Sometimes it's assumed, and that causes problems. The coach that I've found that I've seen was the best at this was Monty Williams. When he took over the Suns, this was before Chris Paul got there. It was Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton were kind of the cornerstones of it. And he would tell each player individually. I remember I was there in his conversation with Mikal Bridges. He said, we're playing through Book and DeAndre. You're going to be in the corner. When they attract attention, they're going to throw it to you. You shoot it, you drive it, or you pass it. And he said it out very clearly, like right from the beginning. He's number one. He's number two. This is your role. And that structure, that hierarchy, made it very clear about who's the roles and responsibilities of each person and how they contributed to the vision. So 3 things are happening this time of year. You're communicating the vision. You're implementing structure and systems to support that vision. And then this sets up the context for the relationships. And without a clear vision, the players are going to wander. They're going to pursue their own vision. Without a clear structure, they're all going to fight for the same thing. And so if you don't have a clear vision and they don't understand how they fit and align with that vision, if you don't have clear roles and responsibilities, they don't understand what they're supposed to be doing, then it's going to create conflict in the relationships. And so you probably remember those days, the first 2 years, Monty Williams was in Phoenix and, you could see the relationships were really strong on the team. I think we saw it this past year with Oklahoma City and even Indiana, but there was really clearly defined structure. And so each person was able to understand their part on the team. And so, the challenge for a coach right now is to establish those things so that you're prepared to navigate the rest of the season. The real challenge is you're never done doing that, right? The whole rest of the season, they have to keep communicating the vision because the players are going to lose their way. And it might change as the course of the season goes. They got to continue to upgrade and improve the systems that are supporting it. And they got to keep refreshing relationships. The season can get to be a monotonous grind and, losses start piling up. You have to bench a guy, whatever happens. And those relationships can deteriorate pretty quickly. And so right now, this time of year is all about laying the foundation for what the season's going to be like. how the team's going to operate together. So I find it, I smile, and it's innocent. It really is. When I listen to the training camp, the media days and the interviews that are coming out of training camp, because this time of year, everybody is hopeful and optimistic, right? You haven't lost a game yet. You haven't had to bench somebody yet. No one broke a team rule. You didn't draw up a play for him and not him. The adversity hasn't hit yet. But what coaches are doing right now in this phase of the year is going to set them up to be able to handle that. And so, super important time of the year, and also one that's super exciting. I'm sure you guys are all excited as well to get the season started so we can turn on League Pass every night. So I'm chomping at the bit. But a little bit of my perspective, my view on this time of year, training camp, preseason, how it sets up for the rest of the year. I know you guys have been talking about it for a couple of weeks now, so be interested to hear your perspective on what you guys have been talking about, or any questions you have for me. Happy to engage.
Awesome.
Christian.
Thanks, Brett. No, that was some gold there. Really good. Christian, I met Christian up in Calgary. He helped out with the surge up there. I'll just tell him a little bit, and then Christian, go ahead and jump in. But Christian was someone who wasn't on staff or anything. He was in the community and just started showing up at coaches' meetings and just sitting in the corner and listening. And pretty soon was at the table, and then was writing some reports for us and just doing his thing. So Christian, take over, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, it was awesome just to get to, be thrown into the mix of things and get some opportunities there. Um, I'm wondering, and I imagine it's probably a little bit easier in the pros in some sense, building this vision, structure, and hierarchy earlier because you know a lot more about the players, a lot more about the team. But if you had experiences where maybe there's a lot of roster turnover, or maybe even, at the college or other levels of basketball that you've worked at, and having to build it a little bit more on the fly and some of those unique challenges of not knowing exactly what your roster looks like.
Yeah, for sure. So 5 years in the G League, and you don't know your team really until about a week or two before the season starts, and only get 8 or 10 days to prep. So, yeah, you are doing a lot of prep work. All these guys at this point have a history, right? They've got film, they've got background in college and that sort of thing. And so you're taking your best guess. And then a lot of it is like hypothesis and prove or disprove your hypothesis. And so, I found it, when you don't have that long of a run up, really valuable to jump into playing and practice as quickly as possible. My first year, I did a lot of drills, because I had this like vision of how I wanted to install everything. And it took us a couple weeks into the season before we realized, how our pieces fit together best. And so I'm a big advocate now for, let's get them playing right away. And a couple things are going to happen. You're going to figure out like who plays well together and what their strengths and gifts are and how they play off each other. And then you're going to figure out who the top dogs are. In the NBA, it's very clear, like Devin Booker is 1A and everyone knows it. He's proven it. When you get to the G League, you're not quite sure who that guy is going to be. And as you play and compete and practice, guys start rising to the top, and then you can start organizing it as you go. So yeah, a little different there when you're building it on the fly. Like I said, it's hypothesis. You're taking your best guess, try to disprove it, and then adjust as you go. But you're always, the challenge here is you're always got to keep communicating it to the players. What's your vision? What do you see for them? How they fit into the big vision? And then adjust when you change. You don't just pull the plug on them. Like, you have to communicate why it's happening, how it relates to the vision, and how it benefits them individually. Good question.
Ryan, what you got, brother?
First question for you here, Brett, is did you ever end up coaching Tyrell Corbin for the for your team in Arizona? He once played for my team in Guelph, so just a quick little nuance there. I just wanted to ask you about that. If so, what was your experience with him? Because I got to meet him quickly, and nothing but great stuff for myself. Second question is, you just mentioned a little bit about your new business you're starting now, coaching and helping develop new teams. Would you just be able to dive a little bit more into in terms of that and like with that as well as what's the biggest challenge you have with like life outside of basketball now, starting in like a new business kind of all in yourself?
Yeah. Thanks for the questions. Yeah, Tyrell, I did have him. What a callback. That was feels like eons ago, but yeah, did coach him. We went into the season, and because of G League rosters and how it works, he was our only point guard when we started the season, and so he carried a lot of weight for us right off the bat. But another coach's son, really smart, high character guy. Really enjoyed working with him. Yeah, and then launching in the business has been great. It has challenged me. When I've looked for jobs, I've wanted four things within those jobs. The first, I wanted to be able to apply the skills that I was, that I have, whatever my gifts were. I wanted to be able to use those. I wanted to be challenged to grow my skills. So take me a little bit outside of my comfort zone. And I guess it's three things, not four. I wanted to work with people I enjoy. And so this business has allowed me to do all three of those things. Apply all of my experiences. I'm learning a ton about starting and growing a business and generating leads and getting my getting my resources out to other people. And I get to choose who I work with. So so far I've liked all of my clients. So it's all been positive. But it's a cool journey because I think a lot of everyone knows culture is important. Most people value culture. They think it's important. I don't think there's a lot of simple or helpful applications of how to build healthy culture. I think most of the resources we get are, we could call them like temperamental solutions. It's something worked for one person and it fit their personality or whatever. And so then they blasted it out there for everyone to use, but it doesn't really fit everyone else. Like it worked for their situation. It's not going to work for everyone. So what we've been able to develop is what we call a template version of culture, which I shared with you: communication, change, connection. And it can fit any personality, any circumstance, any situation. And so being able to empower coaches with that tool set has been valuable. And then the thing that's like just coming out right now, this is kind of new for us, but thanks for the platform to pitch a little bit to you. But worked with a data scientist this summer and developed a tool that can measure precisely where a coach's mindset breaks down under pressure. It is a mind-blowing tool that I've actually tried to like game it, like fix it and trick it, and you can't do it. It's insane. And so there are a lot of like personality tests out there, whatever, team building assessments and stuff that tell you what you do when everything's going well and under normal conditions. But here's what we know: most teams fail not because of what they do well 97% of the time. Most teams fail because of the mistakes they make, and the 3% of the time they're under the most pressure. And so we've been able to identify exactly what that mistake will be so coaches can mitigate those risks ahead of time. So it's been cool to see it and then now try to share it with more coaches and help them. So it's work I'm really excited about. And like I said, it's challenging me in new ways. So it's got me energized. thanks for asking, Ryan.
Yeah, that's really insightful, Brett. That's good stuff, man. And just to piggyback on one thing you said of just working with good people. I mean, that's what I always tell, feel free to correct me if you have different experience, Brett, but I always say like one, getting your foot in the door is if you want to work in the NBA, you pretty much have to take whatever opportunity it is. Once you've been in the league, find your people, and that's what will make it a rewarding experience. And that's at any level, high school, college, pro. It's funny. I was talking to someone today in the league, someone yesterday, and we were all kind of circling back to that same concept of like, there's not like all of you obviously want to work in basketball. There's nothing better that, in my opinion, than working in basketball with a group of people you love working with the goal of winning a championship. It's just such a uh nourishing thing in life, and but if you're not with the right people, it is like a draining, horrific thing of life, traumatizing literally, because it's like you're gonna live with these people. Like I feel like so many people use the 24/7. It literally is a 24/7 in basketball, and if you're not with the right people, it'll spit you out. And so finding your people is huge. So all right, Jacob, what you got, brother?
Hey, what's up, Brett? Thanks for taking the time to speak to us. Like everyone else has said, and like you've said, you've kind of been at a lot of different levels of basketball, college, pro, G League, NBA, all that stuff, right? And you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I just wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on this. How do you approach building culture at, say, the G League and NBA levels versus doing that at the college level? I know you kind of touched on that in a slight way, but how does it change when, you know, guys that are coming from college to the NBA are, the peak athletes and they've probably always been their entire life versus the guys in college who, it's a little bit different when they're coming onto the roster?
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it really does come down to three pieces, and it's like getting them aligned around a vision. It's setting up systems and structure in place for them to excel, and it's investing in the relationships, the connection of the group. And so it really is, I and really this is cliche too now, but like college is changing so much with transfer portal and such. Like, it used to be, college was you're coming here 4 years commitment, we're in for the long haul, and now it's so transitory, and it's kind of like the pros. You know, the challenge I think in the pros is, um, it is their livelihood that's on the line. Like my dad came in, and when I was coaching in the G League, he watched, a couple weeks worth of games. Of course, I'd call him all the time with what's happening, and he goes, he said, I think what I'm learning about the pros is sometimes it's about winning. And there's just so much like extra that's happening, right? And that's true in college too, really. And even more so now than even when my dad was coaching, 5 or 6 years ago. But you're navigating so many distractions, so many other voices. Guys are livelihoods, they're all in different contract situations. It's like it's not a coincidence that the teams who usually excel, typically their contracts are like, everyone on the team is like their contracts are lined up or settled, right? I think there's a lot of truth in that. And so, but it does come down to this. It's like, can you communicate a vision that captures the collective benefit and the individual benefit? And in the pros, the individual benefit carries a lot of weight. Less in the colleges, they'll more buy into the collective benefit. But like I said, now with the transitory nature of college, you still have to communicate the individual benefit. And in the G League, um, it was fascinating. The last 2 years I worked with the Salt Lake City Stars, and Steve Wojciechowski was our head coach. and it was his first year in the G League, and he's coming from Duke, in all the lore of Duke, and then coaching Marquette. And he was trying to build culture in the G League, and I was trying to, this wasn't the best phrase to use, but you're not building culture in the G League. And what I was trying to say is you're not building it like you're building it at Duke, right? There is still a culture that exists, but it's so different. It's so much about the individual vision. And now the challenge is, can you communicate it to that individual that benefits him, but you also know will be great for the collective as well? And that's the challenge. You got to get buy-in on that if the team does well, everybody eats, but they all want to be a participant in it. So they're not happy walking on in the G League. Let's just put it that way. Right. No one goes to the G League to sit on the bench. So I don't know if that
thanks for
answers
the
your
answer.
question.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Thank you.
Brett, from coaching in the G League, I'd be curious because I was actually just talking to someone in the CEBL today, and we were talking about the similarity. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of crossover in players, but how those players a lot of times it's a stepping stone league. Like you're in that league to get to the next league. How do you operate as a coach in that kind of setting and bringing a team together with roles and everything when people are looking to highlight themselves?
Yeah, you got to get them. You got to get them bought in on, like we said, if what's the vision of where they want to go? Like if you want to be in the NBA, this is what you have to excel at. And so this is the skills you need to showcase in the G League to do that. So you have to really get them bought in on the vision of, and this is hard with young guys, especially like first, second year guys. They just want to come in here and hoop. Like, let me show what I got, and you have to get them really bought in on what is the role you're auditioning for. What are you going if you want to be in the NBA, this is what they're going to ask you to do. And can you perform those functions? And so you got to do that here. And for those guys, it's hard because all of them were the guy, the 1A on their college teams. And so it's a different role they got to take on. But you got to get them focused on the present, right? It's a stepping stone, but if they're all thinking about what's going to happen next year, it gets distracting. And it's hard. The G League's a really hard place to coach because of that. And like I said at the beginning, like you're never done reinforcing the vision and their part in it, and what the vision means for them, because you're going to be halfway through the year and two guys that play the same position as them that they just cooked 2 nights ago got called up, and they'd be like, "What the heck, coach? It's not working." But you gotta remind them that those decisions aren't being made just because of your 130-point night. Like there's a lot of factors that go into it. So yeah, it's a mental challenge for the players and the coaches in the G League for sure.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So the other side of our training camp course is resumes and portfolios. This is our last of 4 weeks, and so could you share just a little bit of your journey of how you got into the NBA, and kind of what that process was like for you, and then tips in the current stage of things of getting into the NBA, the G League, those next stepping stones.
Yeah. For the longest time, I've said like I'm the worst person to ask on this because I've never got a job off an interview, and I've never gotten a job off my resume. Now that changed when I went to Salt Lake City. I'll tell you that story in a second. But yeah, I got into the league off of a relationship. Ironically, someone who worked for my dad while I was in junior high, and I was hanging out at the gym and like would play music at the volleyball games. Like she's the one that got me to Phoenix, working for the Mercury first and then for the Suns. And then a relationship inside the organization got me into the video room, and it progressed from there. So yeah, for the guys who are just trying to get a resume seen and win an interview, I don't have great advice for you, unfortunately. But I did. So Salt Lake City.
I mean, touch base on that though, because I still think, what you just said of just your relationships and connections. Where did you start out with the Mercury, and where did you start out with the Suns that you then built the
Yeah,
connection to get over to operations?
yeah. So started in communications with the Mercury and the Suns, and I was single at the time. It just moved to Phoenix. Didn't know anybody here except for two people that got me in the building. Um, and so I didn't have TV at my house. So what I would do when the Suns went on the road is I would go to the video room and watch games. The video coordinator would be there all night recording college games and then coding scouting games. So I would just go sit in the video room and watch basketball because that's all I like to do anyway. And so I built a relationship with actually Nick Urin, who went on to Golden State, now is the GM of the Phoenix Mercury. Um, but built a relationship with him. And then when he got head coach or head video coordinator for the Suns, we had developed a relationship. And like you said, John, you find your people. And I knew nothing about sports code. I had dabbled in Synergy at the time just to build the skill, just in case. And but he hired me just because of our friendship. And so that got me started. And then spent all of August while everyone's on vacation coding sports code so I could figure out how to use it. Probably the year I met you, John, at the sports code conference and trying to figure it all out. And then from there, wild journey. Twice, the Suns fired everybody on staff except for me. And the first time I was pretty proud of it. I thought, yeah, you work hard and you treat people right, good things happen to you. And the second time I realized it's nothing that I'm doing. I'm just, for whatever reason, God wants me here and I'm still here. And so that's how that journey happened. And then when we got to Salt Lake, that was the one time I cold called Steve Wojciechowski and made my pitch on his voicemail, and ended up interviewing and getting the job. But yeah, it's like, there's really no, and I know you say this a lot, John, but like there's no right path or there's no one path to get in. You try to build your network because the relationships are what's going to get you in the door. You try to build your skill sets because the work you can produce is going to keep you there. And so, yeah, you try to do both of those things, and hopefully your time comes.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. No, I mean, I just love that as far as, wherever you're get your foot in the door in basketball, and it's not necessarily in basketball. Um, it could be on the not necessarily basketball operations, it can be on the peripheral, but the people kind of like Brett that are able to make that transition, it's because they spend their time on basketball operations. Like if you just stay on communications, you will be looked at as a communications person. Actually, Ryan, like with Calgary this year, I was talking to Neil because I was like, Neil, where do you want to be? And he was like, oh, I'd love to be in basketball operations. I was like, you need to start coming to practice then. Because if you're only selling merch at the merch table, everyone's going to look at you as a merch person. And so you have to change how people view you. So like what Brett shared, he start going to the video room every day. They start viewing him as a video person. So that's why I love that part of your story, Brett.
That's a great point, and I'd say it's really hard to do. It's really hard to do to change that perception of of how they see you. And so I started it with the Mercury. They all saw me as a PR guy. I started spending time with the coaches staff. Like when we went on the road, I would go to coaches meetings, try to have basketball conversations, so they'd get to know like, oh, this guy actually knows basketball. Like he knows what's going on. And then I got a role in operations, got to be a part of draft conversations, scouting, things like that. So And goofy story, but like when I was in the video room, as a video coordinator, you're the IT guy on the coaching staff, right? Printer breaks, they're calling you, come fix it. iPad doesn't work, calling you to fix it. Well, when I was trying to move out of the video room, I was trying to make that shift to the coaching side where I was actually like player development and assistant coach. New staff comes in and the printer's not working. I wouldn't touch it. If I got up and like, oh, I'm gonna go fix the printer, like there was a time I needed to do that so I could be in the mix, right? But now I was trying to like get out of that perception of being the tech guy, being the video guy. And so I would just play ignorant. And I don't know, you gotta call an IT guy. Maybe they can help you. Like, because I didn't want to be seen as the video guy, the printer fixer. I wanted to see as the coach. So yeah, that's a great point, John. It's challenging to do, and you got to pick your spots right and your timing right. But that's a big piece of it.
Yeah, I got kind of a good story, and I don't know, maybe hindsight funny. What was gonna happen was gonna happen, but kind of same thing. So like I was a video coordinator with the coaching staff for 5, so I showed up at every game in shorts and a Blazers t-shirt to go work guys out and log film. And then, I was able to I moved over to the front office, but I was still with the coaching staff. And I remember it was like a big deal for me. I was like, oh my goodness, how do I dress to the game? Like, do I go and work guys out or whatever? And I showed up in a suit. And from then on, I was a guy in a suit at the games, and I was front office. And they never asked me to like go back to the video room because I was now up front. And I remember it was a big deal for me. I'm like, I'm just gonna show up in a suit. And I'm gonna do that. And that's what I needed to do to transition. Fast forward 10 years later, everybody got fired, and the new GM was like, Chauncey Billups and that crew, they wanted me to go back to the video room because I gave them a list of people to hire. You know how it is, Brett. They wanted to hire all their own people, ex-players, yada yada. They all showed up and none of them logged film. So they're like, "Hey, John, can you go back to the video room?" And I was like, "No." I'm like, "I'm not going back." I told the video coordinator, I was like, "I will help you. Let me know what you need. I'm not stepping foot back in there." And then they fired me. So I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
So anyway, could go both ways, but yeah. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm not a video guy. That's on you guys. And so if you can't hire people to do that job, I'm not going to do it for you. But
Well,
anyway,
I know you got your hand up, Christian, but just wanted to say one point on that. Like, it's wild as your career goes. Like, you'll have these inflection moments, and that you look back and they were like forks in the road, and yeah, you make decisions and for what's best at the time, and you never know where they're going to end up. Like, I had a guy call me and offer me a scouting job with another team, and it was the same year I was about to be head coach of the G League team, and I was like, no, I'm going to pursue coaching. And 2 years later, I'm out of a job, and scouting looks pretty good. But that's how life goes, right? And so you keep moving forward, and you make the best of the situations. But
totally. I feel like in theory, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And so you got to just make your best decision in the moment. All right, we'll take this last question and then we'll let Brett get out of here. But Christian, what you got, brother?
Yeah, cool. I'll keep it quick. Wanted to know if you could maybe dive in a little bit more to what that transition looked like between the video room and jumping into coaching, because it seems like a big step that some people manage to make the leap. Lots of guys kind of get stuck there in the video room. What did that look like for you in a little bit more detail?
yeah, it is. That's a great observation. Like, guys can get stuck in there, and I was aware of that, and so I was very conscious about not. You gotta play it right. Like, you know, if I had like been a video guy and never did videos, like, no, I'm gonna go coach, like that wouldn't have worked either, right? So I became an expert at the video. And once I had like built my capacity enough that the video stuff was easier or second nature, I made sure I spent more time on the court. And so anytime there was a guy on the court, guy came back for shots later, like I got really close, another building relationships. I got really close with our player development coach at the time and made sure we were on the road. I was always going with him, you know, and so that meant earlier mornings or later nights, or, you know, I can't sleep on the plane because I got to do my video work because I still got to get that done. But made sure I found those opportunities to be on the court. And after a while, you know, it starts, the player development coach is like, you know, letting me do the first 5 minutes of ball handling with a guy, you know, and that's where it starts. And then it just grows from there. All of a sudden he's like sick or late or can't be there, and I get to run a workout. And so you just kind of position yourselves for those opportunities, and it's slowly shaping the perception that people see you as. You know, and then at that time, the G League team had just moved from Bakersfield, California to Arizona. And I realized that was my chance to, I didn't want to move to Bakersfield, but I was happy to go hour and a half north to Prescott Valley. So that was my chance to jump on it. And so I went to the G League to be a coach and be seen in that realm. And so get out of the video room. So, good question.
That's good. Well, we'll wrap up there. But Brett, as always, I love having you on here and appreciate you. And thanks for what you bring. Do you want to talk a little bit more just about championship and then drop the links in the chat so people can access those?
Yep, I'll share it there. Championshift.com is where it's at. You can see the tools I was talking about. We just actually in August released a new book, Make Culture Your Edge. It outlines the 3 things I talked about going into the preseason and training camp. And so, yeah, if I can help in any way as you're growing yourself as a leader and as a coach, championshift.com is where you can find those resources.
Love it. Great stuff, man. Any final words of life advice for everyone before you take it off here?
Thank you guys for having me on. I always enjoy jumping on this, and like really appreciate you, John, what you're doing to invest in, you know, younger coaches and guys who are trying to get in the game, as you say. And so appreciate you having me. Appreciate your questions and your engagement. Yeah, no profound life advice. I think what we talked about: find work you enjoy, do it with people you enjoy, and you know, the game is full of insecure people, and it's making it really hard for a lot of people. And that's what we're aiming to do with Championship, is grow more secure leaders that can lead for impact, not their own validation, and make it more fun again.
Yeah, that's good. All right. Well, Brett, hope to catch you somewhere on the road sometime. So good to see you, brother.
See you guys. Thank you.
All right, later. Yeah, I just wanted to, kind of touch base on one thing Brett talked about as well, of the transition of how much things have changed and evolved in regards to training camp. And obviously, like we've had, the strength coach, the nutritionist, and all those people on the last few weeks, and you've seen how active they are year round. Like that is all new in the last 5 to 10 years. So, most of the history of basketball in the NBA was once the offseason hit, you were done. Veterans would leave after the season and show up at training camp. And then obviously summer league. So then it became kind of like after summer league, people would leave, and now it is a short window. And pros and cons to that. I mean, honestly, I think it's healthier for everyone to get away and not touch a basketball, there's very few, but there are a few people. Andre Miller was one. Even, I don't know if you guys remember Andre, but at the end of the season, he left and he did not touch a basketball again until training camp. Very rare, because now you're at then training camp used to be like working back into shape for the season. and now you're expected to come in at training camp ready to go. And so you almost have to because you can't keep up. And you hear about the guys who are out of shape. I don't. Luca was the big one last year, which to me is still so dumb. It's like he just took your team to the finals and then played in Europe. Like let him have a break. And I think that's where for teams of figuring that out of like for like, a management, a coaching staff, they are so eager and ready to get a season started. But a lot of those guys had deep playoff runs and then they play in, overseas international competition and they're done. Like they need to check out for a while. They haven't had a break. And so there's just a lot of kind of fresh dynamics happening where there's a 12-month expectation of guys playing and being ready. And I think that's contributes to a lot of we're seeing a lot of it's kind of weird where we're seeing so many major injuries for people while we're also load managing everyone. It's kind of an odd combination, but I think it starts and Kendra may be able to stop on later, the trainer, and if she's not, she said, you can drop the questions in the Slack channel and she'll get to them later. But I think a lot of it goes to like even, these kids, they start at age 5 specializing in a sport. And so you just repetitively use whether it's baseball, soccer, football, basketball, you're repetitively using the same body parts in the same direction constantly. And now we're just seeing so many catastrophic injuries at such a young age for these guys. So, I think that's where, we talked about like the blood work and all that stuff. There's so much information out there now. But it really is somewhat has to be a cultural shift. And I don't know if there will be. Actually, I don't think there will be because if you can specialize in a sport and become professional at age 19, you're gonna do that. Like you're not thinking long term at 15, You're thinking, how do I get there at 19? Not like how will my body be at 27? Because you might not get to the league if you don't specialize. That's the tricky dynamics. But all that to say, like come training camp now in the NBA, you're expected to be ready to go. And then training camps have been trimmed. Like they used to be like 2 weeks, and now they're just like 3 or 4 days. And then you jump into the preseason and everything's going. So, Ryan, can you talk to us about, obviously you had the Toronto Raptors in town. What's going on out there, brother?
Yeah, that was actually really fun. On Friday, the Toronto Raptors came out to Calgary, and cool little nuance as well. As a former player of the Guelph Nighthawks as well, AJ Lawson is playing in the or last year has played for the Toronto Raptors. Previously was on the Dallas Mavericks. So actually very oddly enough, this is my third ever Raptors training camp I was able to go to. Went to two when I was really young, back in 2002 and 2006, I believe. Back when Vince Carter, my favorite player, Mo Pete, was on the days, but it was actually a really cool experience. We were able to kind of say it was a 3 hour performance. The first hour of the performance was basically like an open practice. They just ran the players through, different drills they would through setting screens and getting players shots. And then after that, they did a little scrimmage. They played 3 quarters and just kind of segregated into red, black, and then was able just to see the teams and the starters. See, I don't know myself. I wasn't a too big of a fan of their rookie draft pick. I myself am a Duke fan, so I wanted them to take Maluwatch, the center, and I think we needed a center. But I was a big fan of their draft pick. Colin Murray Boyles, he was very light on his feet, very disruptive in terms of just I think he had like probably 4 to 5 steals. So I went in as a hater, and he probably sold me as my new favorite player on the team. But it was a really fun experience. So I don't know if anyone else has had an opportunity, or maybe next year. But an open practice, I think, before a game is unlike anything you may ever see before. So I was very thankful for them to make a stop in Calgary here again.
That's really cool. Did they do anything with the surge at all, or?
No, nothing. It was all like pretty quiet. But like I even think the league, our league, doesn't do a great enough job telling like AJ Lawson's story. Like he's a Canadian in the league who's playing for the Toronto Raptors. Like to me, he would be like the face of the league. And like there's very like I don't know, in the photos, he's always the fourth slide and in terms of that. So if I was the
Yeah.
league, I would be doing a little bit more different marketing. I would have, I don't know, had a reporter there. You would just ask him about his story and whatnot. But kind of I guess that's not myself. So
Yeah. No, that's good. Christian, were you able to make it to anything?
Yeah, I was there for the open practice too.
Oh, nice.
They're up until the playing, all of what they did looked very, very much like a surge practice. So felt very familiar after being around you guys for a bit.
Love that. Well, we got Scott Brown here next. So Scott, when you're ready. But Scott actually, Scott was probably there as well. Because he's with the 905. You guys might have met Scott for those of you who were at the you might at the CEBL course. I think he was there. Basil, were you able? Are you with the Hornets this year?
No, yeah, I had some conversations with like my equipment manager, also with the Swarm. So in terms of um in terms of working next year, no, this season, no, I'm not going to be doing that. Just focusing, just more on, projects and focusing more on, portfolios, trying to get that sorted out and, try to see where I'm really, what I really want to, focus on in terms of like basketball operations and all that stuff.
Yeah. No, you've been cranking out some good stuff.
Yeah, actually the last few months I've really loved like the contract side,
Mhm.
contract, salary cap, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we'll see. So
No, I gotcha. No, it's all good. Um, Jacob, talk to us about Scott's gonna be on in a minute. He said he having a few tech issues, but he's all good. So he'll be here. But Jacob, you put together some really good portfolio and content for us last year. Can you tell us kind of your vision of how you operate with that?
Yeah. With the portfolio I'd done last year, that was like a report for the Rockets. I'd done the Rockets that year, and kind of my whole mindset was because I lean a lot towards the scouting side and the scouting slash, basic analytics side. Um, but my mentality was, especially because I didn't really know what I wanted to do at the time, was like, how much stuff can I dip my toes into at once, right? So I did full salary cap. I did full contract scenarios for players. So Fred Van Vliet's player option, which of course then, you know, they opted in. I think it was player option or team option. Can't remember which. But I went through every contract, every player, did full scouting reports, put together all the salary caps and just general, like 1, 2, 3 season plan for ideally how I would run the team, almost like a GM, right? And above all else, with my stuff, like I don't think my stuff is revolutionary in any way, but the one thing I pride myself in is I try to format it really nicely. And I think that goes a long way from all the stuff that, everybody else in this class has said is, formatting goes a long way. And if something looks nice, the content can be, good, but not world shattering, and it'll still seem a lot better than it is. And on the contrary, if you have some world shattering level content, you're an amazing scout or you're an amazing salary cap person, and it looks bad or it just looks and it's just a lot, then it's not going to work. And one thing that I remember when I'd first sent in my portfolio, Mikey V, John, and Bjorn all had said, "Hey, this is great, but it's too long." Right. And that was one of the things that I kind of had to learn was brevity. Because it's tough because you want to get everything in, right? And you want to show your skills. But being able to condense a 20-page document into 5 pages, I think is a lot more beneficial, something I've gradually had to learn, especially on like the scouting side.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a great point. Yeah, Jacob sent us a phenomenal portfolio. I don't know, it's maybe 50 plus pages. And I mean, me and Mikey V and Bjorn, we probably read it and loved it, but like, and kind of our goal for this too is, for those of you who are working on, 'em, like I said, is for us to get it in the hands of people with those teams, so you can get some feedback from someone. And obviously, it doesn't always happen, and sometimes I've passed them on and they don't respond. But that's the goal. But if we're passing it on to someone, it's probably going to be a 3 to 5 page max that they'll read. And that goes with resumes. That's why we always recommend 1 page resumes, 2 page max. Because that's all. Anyone who sent me one to 3 or more, I usually wouldn't read any of it. It's just too much. I'm like, it's long. Even I mean, not to speak, is a student from one of our other classes. He would send me. He's currently sending me reports that are like so long, and I gave him some feedback. I was like, hey, like those are great. And even like for Jacob and his portfolio, I'd keep that. That is great information, great content. And there might be a team that goes, what else do you have? And you can send them the whole thing. But when you're trying to get someone to look at it, it needs to be brief. And so, someone sent me their scouting reports, and I recommend the same thing. I'm like, hey, keep those for if someone needs them, but trim those down to a paragraph. And then he explained to me why he needed to make them longer and stuff. And I stopped giving him feedback because it's like, okay, if you're not going to receive my feedback, moving on. I help someone who wants to be helped. And so, yeah, like even with Jacob, that's what we kind of told him is like, keep the 50 page one, make a 3 to 5 page one. And kind of same thing. We had someone, I mean, they got really eager. They wanted to do all 30 teams. And so, they ended up, with like 180 pages of content. And so, like, same thing for us. What we recommend in that situation is like, all right, no one, if you send anyone a 180 page book, no one is reading it. And so you need to create a website and be able to funnel this information on there. And same thing, like we talked about, Tyson, who was on here last week. That's one of the things that attracted me to his resume portfolio is he also had it online. And so he had so much content and information, but I could choose what I wanted to see. And so, those are just some ways you can operate with that. Christian, what you got, brother?
Just wanted to ask you, Jacob, about uh, your experience of kind of condensing things down and how you prioritize what information to present. I'm kind of going through the same thing right now. My first report I sent to John and Bjorn, it was like, great, but you're saying too much, too many words. Even in the past week, I had to do a video report for the university, I'm helping out with, and ended up talking for 20 minutes, and it was due Tuesday morning. This was like Monday at midnight. I'd finally got it done. Kind of just had to send it as is at that point, but would be open to any advice on how do you prioritize, trim things, just give them the best of the best and leave the rest if they want it.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's something I still struggle with, and John knows I struggled with it early on during the Calgary gig as well. And I think one of the things that helped me is think about who this is going to go in the hands of. Because if you're directing, say a scouting report is not only going to go to the coach, but it's going to go to the front office, right? If you know that, then you can reduce the amount of quote unquote scouting language that you use and the very minuscule things like, you know, stuff on, oh, this guy has great instinct in the pick and roll and like in this situation, like the more granular you get, the longer it gets. And so I guess the main thing is just know who you're talking to. And realize that if they want to know more, they'll ask you questions, I think is another thing where you could purposely leave out some information that isn't 100% necessary, but if they ask you for it, then it's like, great, you already have that on hand. But yeah, just in brief, it's just know your audience.
Yeah, no, and welcome, Scott. Great to have you. Yeah, just to piggyback on that real quick though, but like Jacob said, like understanding who it's for is such a big deal. So like, some of the stuff, you were working on, Christian, would have been for like the coaching staff. Jacob was working on stuff for the players, and that's where yeah, Jacob sent me phenomenal reports. He's really good at describing things, so he might use 3 or 4 words to describe something, and I'm like, just one word. And so it's a challenge, but it's like as a player, I'm like, they're gonna read a sentence, and that's it. So like, what can we condense into that sentence that they will read? For a coaching staff, they're gonna read a little more. For an owner, they want highlights of things, and so yeah, and that's where, like we were just talking about portfolios, the 3 to 5 page, the 50 page, you got different audiences for things. And so that's, anytime and most of your audience is going to want things concise. All right, we're going to jump into Scott Brown here. Scott, the new assistant general manager of the Raptors 905. Congratulations. Fired up when I saw that. Love having you here and appreciate you coming to share. So if you want to just we'll kick off. You can just dive into a little bit of your journey, how you got into basketball and into your role now, and then we'll dive into some like training camp and resume stuff.
Cool. Sounds good, man. Appreciate it. Appreciate you having me back. Always love coming in and talking to this group for sure. Sorry for being late. Was running back from a site visit, and then my computer decided to give me problems with Zoom. So glad to finally make it in. But yeah, my name is Scott, newly appointed assistant GM here with the Raptors 905. Super excited about the opportunity. Originally from the Philadelphia area, played Division II basketball at Lock Haven University. Played 4 years there, majoring in sport. Knew that this was what I wanted to do. Towards the end of my basketball career, I knew I didn't want to play professionally, but was really intrigued about the scenes that kind of build the team. So kind of started to look for opportunities there. Started in the NBA on the business side, working with the Pistons. Did that for about a year. Decided I wanted to get back into the actual basketball side of things. Did a GA stint with Temple women's basketball. That kind of got me up to speed and gave me my foundation for what I kind of do now. Scouted with Sports Info Solutions, specifically through video. Did that for a year and landed with the NCAA as a coordinator of men's basketball, helping to run March Madness tournament. And all of those kind of opportunities led me to where I am now with the Raptors 905 going into now year 3 with a couple more added responsibilities on the team construction part of things, but mostly responsible of running the day-to-day logistics, team travel, onboarding, typically with these guys 99% of the time. So I know we'll dive into things a little bit more granularly, but that's me in a nutshell.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah, you will open it up for questions for Scott, but yeah, can you dive into a little bit training camp? Obviously, you're with the G team, you're partner with the NBA team. What's that look like? The dynamics and getting players ready for the season.
Yeah, man, it's really interesting. I got the opportunity this time around to actually get the NBA training camp experience a bit as well. So primarily this period is obviously for evaluation. I think largely for our roster, you have Exhibit 10 contracts, which are essentially non-guaranteed training camp deals. Um, that a lot of times it's essentially a preferred G League contract. You get a bit of a bonus if you make it through a certain time period. Typically, I think it's January 10th. With the teams like G League affiliate, you get a bit of a bump. And so for me, I think this time is really important to kind of help to determine what guys maybe will stay with the NBA club, what may be coming to us, and based off of that, what do we need to construct around our roster for that. I think at the same time too is getting an idea of where our young prospects, the jumps that they've made. I think we're kind of a bit of a unique organization in that most of our guys stay in market the whole summer. We do a foreign tour in Spain. Obviously, you do NBA Summer League. Our guys will go out and play in LA at the Rico runs for a couple of weeks. We'll do some satellite workouts in some of these guys' home markets too. So I think training camp is a good gauge to kind of see where maybe our young prospects that we've had going into their second year kind of are compared to their first year, and maybe where they'll fall. Are they going to be in the rotation? Are they maybe going to be outside the rotation? Will they be doing a 905 stint? or will they primarily be with the main club? So I think for us, for me specifically, it's a good gauge to kind of see maybe what we're getting down the line, and then maybe what things with our rookies are we going to be paying attention to develop for them to get and crack the rotation. So I think that's kind of the easy thing from an NBA standpoint, and then obviously from G League standpoint, you're just trying to figure out who's going to make the roster, right? Like, it's a little bit more of an interesting opportunity of like trying to find the gauge of development for the main club while still also trying to remain competitive in the G League as well. So sometimes that means you may be looking for prospects that are maybe not as developed, but have a future potentially in the NBA. So that can kind of start with the annual open tryout that every team is kind of mandated to do by the league, and finding prospects through that, as well as a G League draft. And we can kind of dive into a little bit more, but that's the kind of the synergies between the two and how they kind of support each other.
Nice, nice, good. Christian, what you got, brother?
Yeah, Scott, it sounds like the G League has a very interesting dynamic and probably a very unique dynamic being partnered, with the NBA club. And for lack of a better term, you might be kind of seen sometimes as like the JV squad for the varsity squad in the NBA.
Yeah.
And I think you touched on it a little bit, but uh, I'd love to hear more about kind of the decisions that go into who moves up and who moves down. In high school basketball, it's a lot about like, oh, what's best for the program? This guy's going to get
Yeah,
more reps here. Just any insights? Obviously, you're involved with that kind of stuff, so I'd love to just hear more.
for sure. So essentially there's two sets, well, three, essentially three transactions that can kind of happen to move a guy up with the main club. The first being a two-way contract, which is essentially like you have the ability to play for both clubs. It's typically you're only allowed to be with the NBA club 90 days. So primarily the goal of this contract is that you're going to be with the G League team to develop, but you also it gives the front office an opportunity to see like can this player maybe play in the NBA. They have the opportunity to get converted to a standard NBA contract, and then in that instance they'll be with the club full time. But that's the first one. The second one being a 10-day contract. So like if you get on a 10-day contract, you're on a standard G League contract currently, you essentially have 10 days with an NBA club to kind of show what you have, whether that's through practice, games, whatever. Teams use them in different capacities. And then the third would be as an assignment. So essentially, like if you're on an NBA standard contract, but let's say you're a rookie, what you have seen very often in the last couple of years that like lottery picks across the board have spent time in the G League. I think outside of Scotty Barnes for us, every rookie that we've drafted in the last 5 years has spent some instance in the G League. And that's essentially, yeah, you assign them to the G League. They'll play a stint, whether it's one game, 2 games a week. And it's typically dependent on like, are there minutes for them there, right? If there's not minutes for them at the NBA club, you can kind of give them an opportunity to be still play the same role, but maybe in a more enhanced capacity at the G League level, because our main priority is to develop talent for the NBA club, right? So if they want to send our rookie Colin Murray Boyles down to us for, a game or two to work on a specific skill set, that's kind of what we're tasked with doing. So those are the three ways that those transactions can happen, and it's largely based off of getting guys comfortable with roles, especially in instances where they're maybe not getting many NBA minutes. So it's a guaranteed 30 to 35 minutes where they can really test themselves. And I think the talent in the G League has gotten much better year over year. So it's actually good reps that they can get if it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I have a quick follow-up question for you. This might be a
Yeah.
little bit of a weird one, but how much do G League teams, and I'm sure it varies team to team, actually care about like winning? Like how much is the G League championship trophy versus the player development? Like what's the balance there?
It's definitely a mix. There's teams who, like you said, there are teams who value being successful in the G League over development. There's teams that will essentially go get guys with like low NBA upside, but they're G League mercenaries that will go get you 30 points a game. But they have little to no, opportunity to jump up to the NBA level, whether that means they've played a stint in the NBA already, and they don't have many suitors at that point, but you get them on a two-way contract and they're kind of going to lead your team to a top 3 seed in the conference, right? But I think most teams, for the most part, are looking to do both because the whole thing is you want prospects that can contribute to winning, right? So I think like you can't always depend on having your two-way players or having your assignment players when you build your roster. The goal ideally is that you're drafting players that you can see fit into your system and that can contribute to winning. So it's not necessarily that it's one in spite of the other, but it's essentially like a balance. You're trying to build a team that can be competitive, but that will also fit your system and contribute to winning at the NBA level. Because the goal is over the last, I think, 3 years, we've like led the NBA in call-ups or players that have touched the NBA. And I think a big part of that is because we prioritize like players that fit our system that can contribute to winning, and we can continue to develop them in whatever areas or shortcomings that they may have that's preventing them from doing so right out of the draft.
That's a great question, Christian, and a great answer, Scott. That part is fascinating. I'm always fascinated too, because like Scott said, but every team, it's you try to merge both, but every team handles it differently. Even like when I was in Portland, our owner, like he was uber competitive. He wanted to win everything. So like at summer league, we would sign freaking like Michael Beasley and stuff because he wanted to win summer league. And so we were always getting these like 35-year-old vets and stuff. And obviously we still had our draft picks, so we wanted to develop and highlight them, but we surrounded them with all these vets so we could go win summer league. So yeah, there's always a dynamic there. Jacob.
Yeah, Scott, thanks for taking the time to,
Of
talk with us
course.
today. And kind of bouncing off of Christian's question, you briefly, very, very briefly mentioned it there about, drafting players into the system that can compete. But in terms of the draft, because I know the G League does their draft, late October and then tip off
Yep.
tournaments early November, right? And
Yep.
how are you guys kind of viewing the development of the guys you're drafting right away versus the guys who have a couple of years of G League experience under the belt and they're ready right away for tip off? Are the guys that you're drafting also going to be slotted, just a general slide into the tip off tournament, or is there a longer time horizon player development wise with those kind of guys?
Yeah, so it's tough. I think it depends on, so the G League draft is a little bit of a challenge just as a front office to kind of evaluate because typically you might get the pool of prospects in it about a week and a half outside of it. So you're essentially trying to like evaluate a pool of 60 to 70 guys in a span of a week and a half. So I think in most instances, depending on the picks, and you'll see it, there's teams that will draft guys in the G League draft that don't make the roster. So I think it greatly depends on the value that you put on the position and the player, of like how you kind of see them. The last 2 years, like our guys that we've drafted in the first round last year was Tyler Perry, who was at North Texas, is holding a ton of records at North Texas, and then was at Kansas State most recently. But TP was also a guy who played summer league with us, did a draft workout with us, so we knew what we were getting. And the year prior to that was Miles Burns, who was um, like a prolific NAIA career, and then went on to Ole Miss his graduate year, essentially. Had one of the highest like steal generation rates in the SEC. So I think it kind of just depends on what player you're getting, um, and where they fit into your roster, right? Like some teams may have 2 or 3 roster spots at the end of their bench where, hey, we can take a swing on this development prospect in the G League draft that may be able to develop into a solid player, where then some teams are, hey, our roster is already kind of finalized. We want to throw some more competition in at this position because we feel like in our camp, maybe we're light on bigs, which is typically something that's pretty hard to come by in the G League. The big man position is always kind of tough. So I think it just kind of depends on where your roster is currently. Some teams are willing to take a swing on the guy that might be a development project, but most teams are kind of swinging for guys that can contribute right away in some capacity. It might not be that they're a finished product, but if this guy is a high level shooter and to show prospects of maybe becoming a defender or maybe becoming like a plus connector, then some guys will take swings on it. But I think it depends on the position and the status of their roster currently at that time.
Yeah, thanks for the answer. That's awesome. That's exactly what I want to know.
Sounds good.
Scott, could you dive a little bit into the G League draft and how that operates?
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially we all get picks. It's not as much based off of roster as it is with the NBA draft. We don't have a lottery. It's not the big pompous show that comes with the NBA draft. It's essentially all the teams get on a Zoom call, to put it lightly, a big conference call, and we just go through the process. I forgot exactly what the criteria is to become eligible for the G League draft, but I know that we are able to, for rookies into the G League draft. But essentially, players can sign in to the G League to receive a contract to be considered for the draft through their agency. And then we're also able to nominate players into the prospect pool through the open tryout. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with the open tryout, but essentially, every team in the G League will host what we call a local player tryout, where we essentially it's an open invitation for the community to come and try out for our club. A lot of teams will often invite players that they have become aware of that went undrafted, that didn't sign Exhibit 10 deals, that didn't sign summer league deals with a club, never touched the NBA. We'll kind of often invite those guys to participate because it's an easy way to get them into your training camp. But you only get 2 of those slots to invite somebody to training camp. So if there's anyone else that you're maybe interested in, the next pathway in is you submit that name to the NBA, or to the G League to be considered into the player draft pool. So that's essentially how the system is kind of fed. Um, G League draft picks typically aren't valued the same way as NBA draft picks, largely due to the fact that you don't know who's in the pool until a week and a half out. So it makes it a little bit more challenging to evaluate, where like the NBA clubs are evaluating draft classes for 2028, 2029 already, right? So it's a little bit easier to project the value of like what those picks are going to be later down the line, where in the G League, it's essentially an asset that you can use to help sweeten the pot on some things, depending on like how guys are building their rosters. Or just something that you can trade on the clock if there's a certain player that falls to a certain position.
No, that's really interesting. Basil, what you got, brother?
Hey Scott, thank you for coming in. Can you share with us like the process of the international draft and how that differs, or how that is similar or differs from the regular NBA G League draft?
That's a great question. And the international draft, I think, is new, as if I think it's only been around the last 3 seasons. It happens typically around summer league time, like, or right before summer league time. One of the criteria I know that for, especially for the local player tryout, is that you have to have ties to North America, whether you've played basketball collegiately in high school in the US, Canada, or Mexico. So obviously that restricts a lot of international prospects from being able to take part in it. So essentially the international draft is an opportunity for those players that have maybe played in the BAL, have maybe played in like the lower levels of European basketball, the FIBA. We've had some guys that have played in the NBL that have put themselves into the international draft. Um, Similar to the G League draft, the prospect pool is kind of shared in close proximity to the draft actually occurring. But it's held out a little further out than like the G League, their typical draft, to give time to figure out the visa process, to figure out passports, to give time for the league to prepare. Because I'm not sure how much this group is aware of it, but G League contracts are actually funded by the league. So the teams, outside of bonuses for Exhibit 10 contracts, our teams aren't paying anything towards the salaries of these players, which is why we don't have a salary cap. Like everybody makes a standard contract amount, and then there's bonuses that get paid on top of that. If you get an Exhibit 10 contract, if you get a 10-day contract, if you hit certain criteria in the postseason, you get bonuses on top of that. but it essentially makes it where there's no salary cap where some teams offer more than others, because obviously there's some markets that are also better than others. So it's essentially to try to even the playing field a little bit. Everybody makes the same amount contract wise. And so with that, there's a lot of support from the league in getting guys into the international draft, the G League draft, the G League in general. But the international draft is very, very interesting because there's an opportunity for you to get some prospects that have already had pro experience, right? Like there's been some pretty high level players that have come through the international draft the last few seasons. And I would say this past season was probably the most deep pool that we've had since I've been here. So it's definitely something that's really interesting. Teams are able to like recommend players for the international draft as well if they have any sort of connections overseas to agencies. Um, but it's definitely a newer thing, but I feel like it's building some international talent that's come in really, really well. What is the kid's name that was in the draft this year? He played for Portland's G League team, but was in the top 5 in steals in the league. I forgot his name, but he was like one of the guys that I really, really liked in that class. I just don't remember what his name is off the top of my head. But he actually declared for the NBA draft this past summer as well. I'll probably, while we're sitting here talking about it, I'll probably look it up because it's going to bother me.
Sounds good. We're gonna go one more question
I
here,
appreciate it.
and we'll wrap it up. So Ryan, what you got, brother?
Yeah, I guess my question for you is, I believe over the last like half decade, there's been a lot more expansions across the G League, but still not every single NBA team has an affiliate team underneath of them. Why is this? Why don't you think every, NBA team has a affiliate team? Just because I know you mentioned the last, half decade, every Raptors has pretty much played in the G League, but I think you could go even farther, probably the full decade with, Fred VanVleet and Pascal both playing a lot of time and winning a G League championship as well, so there's some effort into that as well. So just wondering your thought on that. And then, yeah, that was my question.
Yeah. So Isaac Nogues was the name that I was talking about. So that was the guy I was just talking about, but he was an international draft guy. Officially now, every NBA team has a G League affiliate. The Valley Suns were the last team to come back. They were the Northern Arizona Suns years and years and years ago. But with Matt Ishbia coming back, he made that a priority just for the club to bring that back. So now every team has an affiliate, uh, including the Mexico City Capitanes are the only team that are unaffiliate to anyone else in the league. And I think a lot of teams are starting to understand the value of having a G League club, just because the level of competition that your young prospects are getting to experience when they are not necessarily ready to get minutes at the NBA level. I think the priority on that, especially seeing how many guys have went from G League success to NBA success in the same season. I mean, we had a number of guys last year, AJ Lawson and Jared Roten, Jamison Battle, that like started with us. Even Brandon Carlson. Brandon Carlson went and got him a ring. He was with us for the entire summer, first 3 weeks of the season, and then got called up to the Thunder and stayed with the Thunder the rest of the season and got himself a championship, right? So I think a lot of teams are understanding like the incubator that it can be for development talent. And I think because of that, it's led to, kind of a swell of more teams developing their clubs. So
Appreciate that. My bad on that. Then quickly,
no,
do
no
you
worries.
guys do you guys quickly ever try to make it like a standpoint to have a Canadian on the roster? And then specifically with AJ Lawson, how much scouting do you do in the CBL? Because
Yeah,
I
so
actually used to work with AJ in Guelph, oddly enough.
oh, dope, dope. Yeah, man. I think it's definitely something we're very mindful of. Like we are very mindful of the fact that we're Canada's team. I know that the Long Island Nets snuck in here and played some games in Montreal the last 2 seasons, but it's definitely something that we're mindful of, especially with the talent that surrounds Canada throughout the country. There's talent all over the place. I'm very mindful of the CBL. I know I've sent names to John and asked him about guys. I also am a big advocate for our guys playing in the CBL. Um, Obviously, Evan was with John in Calgary this summer, but I think it's something that we've seen the value in the CBL for sure, and it's been very, very intentional of like having CEBL players come in, and try out for us in the summer. I know we had David Walker, Justin Jackson, Olu was with us for tryouts. And we've kind of been more intentional of having guys on our roster. We have Quincy Guerrier back this summer as well. That was with Montreal. It's something that we definitely are very, very mindful of when building our roster to kind of be able to showcase the talent that Canada has. And there's a number of Canadians throughout the G League as well. You got E-Man Miller in Chicago. You had David Kasunlaw that's bounced around the league a little bit. But there's a number of guys that are kind of running through. So it's cool to be able to be kind of an advocate for Canada now, being an American. So yeah, for sure. Hope that answered the question. I know I rambled a little bit at the end. You got
No,
it.
that was great. I'm excited for more CBL 905
Let's
connections.
build the pipeline, man. Let's build the pipeline.
But all right, well, Scott, thanks for being here. Awesome to have you. And yeah, any final words of life advice before you take off here?
Yeah, man. No, I appreciate you having me as always, man. I think in this part of the industry, it's obviously super, super competitive. I think like the two pieces of advice that I would give is like one, run your race, right? Like I think it's very easy to get in the competition game of this person got this person got that. But I think there's a space for everybody in this industry, and I think year after year it continues to expand and continues to grow. And I think you just kind of continue to stay focused on the process and let that dictate the result. I think sometimes when we get focused on the result specifically and it doesn't happen, it's very easy to lose motivation. But I think when you're staying dedicated to constantly getting better through the process, the result that you want to happen is going to come when it's meant to. And then the second piece, and I've said this probably 2 or 3 times at this point, but that's how important it is to me is just as important to network with your peers in the industry as it is with the people that you're trying to connect to, get in front of decision makers, because I've like can say it firsthand, like the amount of people who I've met at various jobs or going to summer league or going to Portsmouth that are now my peers in the industry, working in the G League, working in the NBA, or going to get dinners when we're at these places that we used to beg people for tickets to. It's like really, really important. You never know when your friend that you were going to catch up and grab dinner with when you were at these events are going to be the people that you're calling to make trades with or to get intel from. I've seen it now going into year 3 from year 1 in, that there's always somebody that I've known from outside this world that breaks in. And it already gives you kind of another stamp of credibility of, hey, this is happening with this team. Oh, I have a friend over there. Let me just give them a call quick and we can figure out how this player was with them. So that's one thing. That's the 2 pieces of advice that I would give for sure.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, Scott, hope we run into each other again soon, and great to have you here, brother.
You know, brother, we're in Portland soon, man. So I expect to see you.
All right, sounds good. We'll catch you then.
All right, guys. See you,
Thanks,
Mikey.
Scotty.
Catch you,
All
man.
right. Super excited for our next guest. Obviously we talk a lot about relationships and connecting with people. This is someone who cold messaged me on LinkedIn, and we became, we touched base, had a phone call, and then pretty soon she was in the mix for applying for jobs with us. She worked with the Heat, the Bucks, and now we're good friends. And so, Ruth, if you just want to talk a little bit about your journey, and then also, yeah, since we met on LinkedIn, of just like a little bit of like just reaching out to people and building relationships, and what's that like?
Yeah. Well, thank you for the introduction. I'm excited to be here. I guess for sure, I'm actually born and raised from Miami, Florida. I attended Syracuse for undergrad, where I was a head manager for the Syracuse women's basketball team, which is great. Got a lot of hands-on experience there. COVID hit, came back to Miami. At this point, really knew I wanted to work in the world of basketball. So I ended up writing actually a handwritten letter to Miami Heat coach Eric Spoelstra, which led me to a video internship with the Heat. I would say probably, a lot of people look back at COVID and think it was terrible, but for me, it was probably, that was like the best thing that could have ever happened to me. But it was great. Really got to learn how to use all the different video softwares like Synergy, Sports Code, Second Spectrum, breaking down player tendencies, doing post game analysis as well. I did realize that that experience led to me not really wanting to go the coaching path, definitely more into like operations and scouting. So went out to summer league that summer. Basically, a few months out of summer league, like John touched on it, just kind of intertwined it a bit. But I kind of knew just from like talking to people at the Heat and just general people that I'd met, like building relationships is huge. It really comes down to a lot of it is like, who do you know? And it's not even just like trying to talk to as many people as possible, but like having genuine connections with people. So I was pretty intentional, like the months leading up to summer league and like who I wanted to specifically talk to. And funny enough, I had sent a message to John via LinkedIn, and that's kind of like I almost landed an internship with the Blazers, and then I ended up landing with the Bucks. So it's just funny how things kind of work out, and obviously still connected with John. But yeah, I was there for over 2.5 years as basketball ops intern, and had a lot of different responsibilities, like managing the VP of scouting's calendar. I was doing scouting reports, intel reports. I was in charge of organizing our film database for the draft as well as a free agency, doing any draft travel as well, any like player services events too. So kind of all over the place. And then I was lucky enough to get presented the opportunity to go full ride to graduate school. So recently, back in like end of May, obtained my MBA and my master's in sports administration. So trying to figure out what's next, but very grateful for the experience that I've had so far.
No, that's great stuff, Ruth. Yeah, can you talk a little bit just from your roles with the Bucks in particular?
Mhm.
But what as far as training camp, when you're handling logistics, calendars, scouting, intel, what are you doing to prepare for the season with all of that?
Yeah, a lot of it is just tracking. I mean, you're kind of starting to do it in the summer, at least for the scouting department, but especially with the transfer portal, like where did everybody like end up? You're doing a lot of injury research as well. Like that was a lot, like a big job of mine is just like keeping track of like who maybe got injured or any surgeries over the summer, like anything that you read. It's not always something like publicly like communicated to. So a lot of research on that. We would just have like all the rosters up to date. I would say as well, I would do a lot of decks on how NBA teams basically have changed from like one season to the next. But I will say things, I mean, for the most part, like preparing for the season, like things don't really pick up until September, just because like a lot of like probably like the beginning of September because a lot of people are still on vacation. But it's a lot of just like preparing materials. There'll start to be some like free agent workouts too. So some rosters aren't obviously completely filled, but not definitely not the craziest part of the season. So that definitely starts to pick up a bit.
Yeah, and obviously questions, feel free to raise your hand anytime. Can you dive in a little bit, like as you were looking to break in the league, just how you were reaching out to people and building relationships and what that looked like?
Yeah, so I think for me, the biggest thing is I spent time going through, I think a lot of it was through Real GM, or if you search up a team on LinkedIn and see who works there. I tried to like at least my goal, especially the first time going into summer league, to try and connect with like one person from every team. I was pretty ambitious, like honestly, like I think if you're there for like 3 or 4 days, if you can meet with like 5 or 6 people, that's great. But just making sure I'm sending like personalized messages because it's really easy. Like, they're getting every person in the NBA is getting probably like over 100 messages via LinkedIn. So it's like, how do you make yourself stand out? So that was like super important. And then even just bigger than that is like, again, like if you're lucky enough to talk to somebody, you're talking to like a bunch of other different people. So like what research can you do before going into a call to maybe learn a little bit more about their background, like touch on something like there's been a few times where maybe I've gone to the same like college as somebody or they're from the same part of town. Like I remember, like, for example, when I was on the phone with John, we actually like bonded over The Bachelor. And like at that time, not as much now. I feel like The Bachelor's kind of gone downhill. But I definitely like that was like my big touch point with John. And so like it's also like following through and building authentic connections. So I'd like text him and be like, did you see what happened last night or whatnot? So I think that's really important. You want to be memorable, but at the same time, like being authentic and not like trying too hard.
Man, I like that you brought that up, Ruth. I know it's fast. I always tell everyone like be a well-rounded. I don't know if bachelor counts as well-rounded, but you just you just never know what's gonna connect with someone. Like I've always said, and nothing against people who it's like they live, eat, breathe basketball 24/7, but I don't gravitate towards those. When I ask them like, what are your hobbies? What do you like to do outside of basketball? And they say nothing, just basketball. I'm like, that's boring. Like
Yeah.
you have nothing else you do with your life, and so you just never know, and that's where just always encouraging you guys to like be yourselves as well. Because you can't make something up. It's like, who are you? What are you passionate about? And that's what's going to connect with someone. I forgot. Ruth always reminds me of our. I agree. Bachelor has dropped off. I am watching Bachelor in Paradise right now, though. I don't mind it. They're doing a good job.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, Christian, what you got?
It sounds like Ruth, you have a lot of experience, especially early on, with like just kind of cold reaching out to people, finding ways to, get in front of the right people. It sounds like summer league's a really, really big part of that as well. Curious, one, what was your success rate like? And two, you know, how did you get the initial connection with a lot of people? Because I can imagine it may not be too difficult to get somebody's LinkedIn, somebody's email, but to actually get to a point where you can make a personal connection with them, what were you doing that made you stand out?
Yeah, I would say the first summer league I went to, I'll be like transparent. I was so nervous because I was like, you basically like how I did it was I send out a good amount of text probably like the week before I left for Vegas. And I had kind of have been told like don't be offended like once you get to Vegas if you get there and you hit up somebody and they just like don't respond. I think the reality of it too is like a lot of people like this is their time to kind of breathe a bit. And everyone has different priorities and motives like why they're in summer league. Like some people generally do want to talk to like I've met a good amount of people they do want to talk to younger people who are trying to break in. Some are just there to do their business and basically get out of Vegas. And I feel like summer's there to party. But it's definitely like you kind of don't know. But I tried to at least going in. I think what's helped me be more successful is to have a call prior. I would say like if you haven't talked to the person like at all and they're just like reaching out for the first time, that's going to be pretty I feel like it'll be probably unlikely for them to want to meet up. But yeah, no, I honestly like my first year because I did a good job of speaking to people before I went. I was pretty successful. I want to say it was kind of crazy. I probably met with like at least like 15 or 16 people and I was maybe only there for like 3 days. So I felt like I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off because it was just like staying in the gym most of the days and like, sending texts and like you got to be also like not like knowledgeable of like every team's schedule. So a lot of the times if a team's playing that day, like you kind of know like okay they're gonna show up to the arena at a certain point probably like depending on like what their role is it could be like an hour or two before and then usually after the game like now and then it depends I think what time like if it's earlier in the day it's usually some people will stick around after they play but if not like they're gonna go back to the hotel like it's probably been a long day for them but no, I was pretty successful. But I think the biggest thing is like I had to get advice from someone to like just not take things personally. And then you'll be shocked too. I think another thing that I learned is like after summer league, let's say if I didn't meet with somebody or text them, they didn't respond. And then I maybe hit them up because a lot of times people go right into vacation. I maybe like text them like end of August. Like they'd be like, oh yeah, like let's connect. So like I didn't take just like the no answer like as like a total no. It's just like, again, people have different priorities. What was the second part of your question? You asked, I don't know if I had answered everything, but
I think you pretty much nailed it. I can't remember if there was another part to my question, but I did have a small follow-up that was
mm.
what kinds of people are you reaching out to? Is it across the whole spectrum of the staff? Like who's actually responding to you when you're reaching out?
I would say a lot of the times, I mean, I was reaching out to interns, coordinators, managers. I mean, I was kind of all over the board. I'd say most of the time I'd have more like probably like coordinators and managers probably respond back, but every now and then I would have some like assistant GM or VP respond back. So you just kind of don't know. But yeah, it's just like kind of like it's like the more emails and like messages you kind of send out, like the higher probability you'll have of like a response.
Yeah, good stuff, Ruth. All right, last question for Ruth, and we're gonna let her get out of here. Jacob, what you got?
Yeah, Ruth. So I have a main question is just about, actually, this is my entire question, is you got some experience in the NBA, you know, through internships, all that stuff. And then you went back to college, like you said, got a full ride, got your MBA. Why did you do that? And what do you feel like from your MBA has best equipped you for the future in basketball, just in general?
Yeah, I would say the first main reason was I think my parents would have killed me if I turned down free education. So, and for me personally, I've always wanted to pursue higher education. It was just like a matter of when. And I think just to have the ability to go do that was like a no-brainer for me. But I think something that resonated with me that I started to see just like being around in a front office, especially like the higher up executives, they're dealing with the business side like a good amount. I think I made that assumption like coming in that oh, like they probably don't really talk to the business side, but you have to like actually have some knowledge on the business side and like have an understanding of like analytics and like strategy and like marketing and corporate partnerships. Like, so for me, I was like, I think for my long-term goals, like one day I'm hoping to be an executive. I wanted to be as like well-rounded as possible. And, you know, people actually like a good amount of MBA people now and then will ask me, like, do you regret like leaving the Bucks, like to go do this? And I was pretty lucky too, because I got to like, I still worked for Milwaukee remotely while I went for my first year. And then basically I was doing like a month consulting trip in Italy with the program. And like, it was during the draft. And I was like, okay, like this just basically like not going to work anymore. But yeah, people ask me all the time, like, do I regret it? And I really don't, because I feel like I've grown so much as a person. Like, I've learned so much about analytics, strategy, consulting, corporate partnerships, marketing, like digital media, like things that I did not have exposure to undergrad. And like really things I did not get exposure to with like the Heat or Milwaukee. And I just even think from like a leadership aspect and like my communication style, like everything has truly evolved. So I feel like I'm even a better candidate now than I think if I ever honestly stayed and continued the internship.
That's a great answer, Ruth. All right. I told Ruth I let her get out of here. So Ruth, thank you so much for swinging through. Do you have any final words of life advice for everyone?
Yeah, I kind of heard him talk about, he had a similar advice to me, but I was gonna say that I think the biggest thing is like patience and not, I mean, like I'll be transparent right now. I'm going through like a similar process. Like I'm trying to re-break into the NBA or like really the basketball realm right now. And everybody does run a different race and it's nothing personal. You just gotta focus on you and how you can get better, you know, every single day and staying confident in your abilities and who you are. Like you're probably gonna get bunch of no's before you get a yes. And I think the people that, you know, if you just continue to really, you know, knock on that door, at one point it will open. But I think like the biggest thing I've learned is just making genuine connections. Like it really does like comes down to who you know. Besides, like you can be the most experienced, but like, you know, having relationships definitely helps and will move the needle if you're like far in an interview process.
Awesome. Good stuff, Ruth. Good to see you. We'll be in touch and all the best in your endeavors as well.
Thank you. Yeah, and if anyone has any other questions, I'm sure John can share my number. More than happy to talk to anybody. But yeah, thank you for having me and hope everyone else has a great night.
Awesome. Thanks, Ruth.
All
Later.
right, take care. Bye.
I'm gonna chat a little bit more about Ruth. So she got, like I said, I think she's one of the best people of just cold messaging. And that's one of the things I do recommend reaching out to as many people as possible, but personalizing it. Like that's what she mentioned. Like that's the differentiator. Anything that like appears copy and paste or isn't, like I had a handful of people message me this week on LinkedIn and we're just like, can you help me get a job in the MBA? Yada yada yada. It's just like no. Like I don't sign up for my class, read my blog. I don't. The information's out there. Like you got to ask something that's different from what I've already put out there. And I don't remember. I just remember Ruth reached out to me on LinkedIn, but it was personalized. It was interesting, and I responded, and that's how we connected. And then, another guy, Zach Welch. I haven't mentioned him here, but he did the same thing. Like, and I asked him like at Summer League because we connected. We built a great relationship, and we're at Summer League, and he was working there, and I was like. I asked him about when he reached out to me, and he's like, I reached out to 1,000 people. But like for me, I felt like it was personal to me, and I responded, and we built a relationship. If I had known he reached out to 1,000 people, I might not have responded, but I didn't know that because he personalized each of them. And so that's just like such a key when you're looking to meet people. Another thing I just want to highlight about Ruth. So like she mentioned getting an internship with the Miami Heat. She did that for a year. She was a paid position and everything. The second year they asked her to come back, but they weren't going to pay her, but they really wanted her back, and she turned it down. And I thought that was incredible because so few people would probably turn down an opportunity in the NBA. But she valued herself above like taking a demotion per se. I guess me and Brett kind of talked about that a little bit as well. But yeah, she turned Miami down, and so that put her. That's when I interviewed her at the Portland, and she got back in the mix. But she had no guarantees, and then she ended up getting on with the Bucks in a better role than if she had just gone back to the Heat. And because the thing is, and like I've told you all this, but it's like you're probably going to have to work for free, and that's not a bad thing. You get your reps, you get your experience. That's a good thing. But if there's no progression up, you're probably going to stay there, and people will take advantage of you. And that's where you kind of gotta just each situation's a little different. And you need to be growing, and you need to know like the people there are invested in you. Basketball is a funny thing. I mean, I've got a lot of CEBL connections here. There's not a lot of money for people, for anyone there. And so, again, you can't necessarily base it all on the money, like, but do the people value you? Are they helping you grow? Are you learning? Are you bettering yourself? And so, like, that's one of the things I always talk about with all of you is like, enjoying the journey for what it is. Like, are you enjoying what you're doing, the relationships you're building? And those are the most important things. And then, the money piece, you kind of have to decide that as you go. And like if you get married and you have a family and it's like, like for me, I had a blast in Calgary with y'all this summer. I loved it out there. If I was married and had kids, which I would love to be, I don't know if I could have gone and done that. Would I do it again? Absolutely, I would do it again. But you kind of have to judge, what season of life are you in these things? Because even with the Blazers, I remember we had people who were interns and they interned, and then they couldn't do it again because they had kids at home. And so some of this stuff, is all about kind of what space in life you're in, and taking that as you go. But we got 10 more minutes here. So we'll open up questions, and I'm gonna throw it over to Bjorn to chat for a bit. But I first of all just want to say thanks for all of you for being here each week and showing up to the course, and I hope you've gained a lot and learned a lot. You've all kind of been a part of Get the Game 101 already, so thank you. I appreciate you. But as you know, like me, Mikey V, Bjorn, for us, it's not like, hey, you showed up to this class, thanks, see ya, never like, we're competing with Basil on the fantasy football field this week. We're sorry, Jacob and Mike, they're gone. But we're in this. Abs, you had sent me a message on Slack about the portfolios and is there a deadline? Same thing. If you're working on them, you can send them to us at any time. Let us know, like we can give you feedback and progression with where you're at in it and what it looks like, and so. Feel free to send it anytime and, happy to help you all out along your journeys. And yeah, and who knows, you never know. We all end up being on the same teams. Like I said, I mean, that's why it's cool to have Scotty Brown here. Scotty was in this class 3 years ago. That's how we met. And then all of a sudden we're talking Evan Gilliard as he's going from the 905 to the Calgary Surge. And, we're keeping tabs on each other and what's going on there. And then he hit me up, wanted to know about Olu. And so we were able to get Olu over there for a tryout. And so it's like, you just never know where these, connections go. But I am glad to be connected to all of you. And yeah, thanks for being a part of this. I'm going to kick it over to Bjorn and Mikey V, and then we'll just open it up for some Q&A.
Yeah, just really quickly, I kind of wanted to jump off on the networking and reaching out, especially like from the cold, like, outreach like front. Like, it makes that so much easier to do if you have a mutual contact or someone that they know that you know well, or that that they know. That can go a long way, like in establishing like credibility, and like having someone that you like, oh, this is a good person, like I can vouch for them, like kind of thing. Like that can, like, knock down a lot of blocks in terms of, like, getting through and being able to talk to someone and reach them. I will say, like, the first 7 years in the NBA, like with Portland, like, so focused on the basketball and the work that I didn't really take much time to network or get to know other people. Like when I went to summer league, first time it was probably like 90% basketball, like 10% networking, like just really, really focused on all that stuff. But then when your role is gone and like you don't have a job anymore, it's like, okay, like I can do all this stuff, but like who do I show it to? Like kind of thing. And so, it kind of reverts to like, okay, now I'm back to square one and I got to do all this cold outreach and, get creative about who to reach out to. And that's where you lean on people that you trust, and you have that work portfolio and whatnot. But I mean, it's nice when you have that card where it's like, hey, I spent a decade in the NBA, like that'll obviously knock down a lot of blocks for you immediately. But just having like an established network of people that you can lean on and you get to know along the way, like you should, like even the guys that we've had like land in the NBA, like I keep telling them, like keep reaching out to people, like keep learning, like you're never done like learning everything. You're not gonna figure it out on the job, and so the more people you know and you can build bonds with, like, your peers or people even above you, like that stuff can help. And you just never know when it's going to come in handy. And, again, talking about the summer league thing, like when I go now, like I probably spend 95% of my time like networking or in the hallway. Like I remember me and Johnny like tag team in the hallway like a couple of years ago, like spending literally like 4 hours just between like games talking to people. Like it's a whirlwind. And so, like, are you there to watch the basketball? Like it's fun to be there to see all these, like, young guys. It's honestly not very good basketball, but like some of that stuff like helps. But really it's just all, it's a very much a relationship business. So definitely would encourage you guys to be reaching out and continuing to, broaden your network as you go along too.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. Yeah, me and Bjorn, we get stuck in hallways. You just start hanging and talking to people, and like that's, I don't know, it's one of the beautiful parts of of it is like the people. And I'm gonna kick it over to Mikey V. One thing I wanted to mention, Kendra, she had something come up again. She wasn't able to stop by, but she said, and in the Slack channel, any questions you have about trainers, training camp, all of that, just drop them in the Slack, and she's gonna hop on there and answer them. Mikey V.
Yeah, just want to echo what these guys are saying. It was Brett Burchard who said, to build a relationship with your peers rather than just the people higher up than you. And Scotty Brown repeated that, and I thought that was fantastic advice. Um, I mean, anybody is potentially a helpful resource, so it's just good to, you know, build a nice little group of people that you're coming along with. I know John and Bjorn have become two of my confidants and like, people I value greatly. Sonny Aluwalia is another person who is a huge sounding board for me. And all my jobs in basketball have been through like me doing work and gaining these connections. And like I when Johnny asked me for resume tips, like I didn't really have any because I've gotten my jobs through connecting with people. And yeah, honestly, I would say for the resume factor, like, think of really interesting talking points about yourself. Like when I find that when you're interviewing, it's about you. It's about how you're interacting to this job, to these people you're going to be around. So yeah, I'd highlight that. Like and especially Johnny's brought this up before. Anything you're doing in basketball, if you're going for a basketball job, is going to be interesting to somebody. Like, they're going to want to know about that. Um, so yeah, like, I started with draft.net. I got to Pro Insight through knowing Matt through I had known that Matt, but had met him through Summer League. And then I did BAM testing and showed a lot of passion towards that. Uh, did some other things with them, and now I'm with BAM. So yeah, it was just putting in work, showing your value, showing you're passionate about it, and that was how I built the basketball jobs that I ended up getting. So yeah, that would be my advice. Like, show passion, build relationships, and show your value and hard work through that. So yeah, and
No,
rise up with everybody else.
definitely. No, I appreciate. I know, and just the whole concept is funny. Some of you have been in class for, but like, um, Jacob helped me with thank you from with my portfolio, which is awesome. But it's like I was getting references from people who were students in this class, and we've been tag teaming with each other on play. So it's just like, um, you know, I always. Oh yeah, like Mikey just said, we rise together. Like you're gonna rise with the people you're around and work together. So anyway, yeah, it's 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock wherever you're at. So that caps the class and the course. The coaching cohort, we bumped it back to give us some more time and separation. So it's going to start October 22nd and then go through April. So that's still out there if that's something you're interested in. But yeah, no, we appreciate y'all, and we'll still be on the Slack channel. Obviously, Kendra gonna hop on there. I'll drop the link for this course, and if you guys have any follow-up questions or anything, hit us up anytime. I feel like everyone on here, you know where to find us, and yeah, if you want to chat or have any questions, go ahead and bring them out. But yeah, appreciate y'all. Thanks.
And I have to say, getting the Game 101 crew at Summer League have it's been so good. I think it's led people to lots of different connections. It's gotten people jobs. Yeah, just keep in touch with everybody in the class and in these past classes. And yeah, I know that when I'm at Summer League, I'm trying to line people up with either people I know or people that have been getting the Game 101. So just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Johnny, it's funny. I know for a fact, like I talked about that 4 hour, like, conversation a couple of years ago, like, we're hanging out in the hallway. I know for a fact, like one of those introductions I made to for like a student to another person who was about to get in the NBA, like that person was like a reference for that person to get an NBA job recently. So kind of cool to see that come full circle.
Yeah.
And Christian, you had a question earlier about like portfolio and like what to put in there. So I will say, like a few years ago, like when I was interviewing like with East Coast NBA teams to be like a West Coast scout. I know it's really tricky to identify what you want to put in there. Like for me, it's like, I've got hundreds of scouting reports that I've done, over the years that I'm like really proud of and everything, but it's like they're not going to spend the time to look through all those. And like the sheer volume, it's like, okay, this is cool, but it's not like giving me an idea of what you could do. So it's like, all right, let's pick out like the 2 or 3 best ones that are in there. Let me like really like polish these up, make them look nice, expand on it, make sure there's like, really show my full capabilities in just those 2 or 3 pieces. Have like my video linked in there, specifically like, for my examples, like, pull out all the stops on those few things. And it's like, okay, if they like it and I got them hooked, then it's like, here's all my analytic reports. Like, here's some supplemental video. Like, I've taken the time with like my scouting. Like, I went and got like my passport and like I put together like an entire scouting map of the West Coast, like every location of every team. Like, here was what it like the time to travel by plane. Here was the cost, like estimated. Like, so it's like had all my stuff together, like and ready to go. Like, so I could immediately like be a plug and play like piece, but like getting that the hooks in that team, like again, like network goes a long way with doing that. But if you're going in cold, like you give them like your 2 or 3 like best pieces of like scouting or coaching plan or whatever. You make them look nice. You make it be brief but dense, but obviously readable and relatable as well without getting too into the weeds. But just make sure those first few pieces are like your best stuff because again, like Johnny said, like they're not going to look at them like a super long time, but what they do look at, you want to make sure like that's what they remember. Like oh, that was really interesting. Like I want to know more about this guy kind of thing. So you just really focus on those pieces, I would say.
That's awesome. Thank you for the advice.
You bet.
Have y'all ever thought about doing like an in-person class, maybe like a day or two in summer league, if like everyone is available? Have y'all ever thought about that?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about it. I think we're more like kind of, you haven't been out there, have you, to Summer League or?
I have, yeah.
Oh, you
I
have?
have. I haven't. Not last summer, but I have though.
Gotcha. Typically, we've just done like kind of meetups,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
halls and such. It might make sense to do, a class or a conference. There's so
Right.
much stuff out there that
I know.
I almost prefer just to hang out, like
Right.
sit together, meet, connect, rather than I don't know. I think it's a good idea. Um,
Right.
so maybe one day, but we definitely, do our meetups and stuff as we can. So
Right.
I was gonna say like one of my favorite parts of summer, like when we went a couple of years ago, was just picking a game at the end of the day and just having everyone like come into like a designated section and meeting each
Oh,
other in person and talking and hanging out and watching the game, talking about
yeah.
the game, and everything. And like it's cool to have class
Yeah.
and everything, but it's like when you're all in the presence of each other, you
Right.
kind of got to know each other, for a little bit of time. Like it's cool to just kind of be there and enjoy it,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Yeah. That's a good idea.
Yeah, the end of the day meetups were the best. They were great.
Cool.
Yeah, so I also had a couple of questions. I was gonna ask Kendra these because these were like injury related. So I'm just gonna try to give a background information to like the things that I wanted to talk about. For the first thing, yesterday for the first time I learned that Steph Curry was nearly a Milwaukee Buck before. Like he was involved in the Andrew Bogut trade, but then it became Monte Ellis instead of him. The deal got canceled because, or I mean, he wasn't involved because of his ankles. And then that also reminded me of like the situation in the NFL where Drew Brees could have been a Miami Dolphin, but then the staff had an issue with his shoulder. Carlos Correa could have been a Giant or a New York Met, but then he ended up I mean, there was a concern. There was some injury concerns, and so the contracts that he ended up getting, got nixed at the end, and then he had to go back to Minnesota. So I was wondering, like, what do like different I guess medical staff see in a player that makes them want to keep the player versus like not keep them?
Abs. I like. I'll be honest. I'd never heard of Steph almost getting traded for Andrew Bogut. But yeah, I remember Monte Ellis versus Steph Curry being like an actual conversation, and I I was like Steph did have ankle issues, so like I think that was part of the reason why he signed such an insanely low second contract. It was because of the injuries, and he wanted long-term money. So yeah, and that's what made the Warriors, that's what gave them the ability to eventually build the dynasty they did contract wise and not have to give up a Draymond Green or Klay Thompson or anything like that. Um, but yeah, there were ankle issues with Steph, so maybe they were worried about the Bucks turning that down. I don't know. Um, I was always team Steph Curry over Monte Ellis, so I was like, I just I I immediately saw Steph and I thought he was going to be a star. Like he just his touch was insane. The way he moved on the court, like I remember seeing a game against the Raptors his rookie year, and he was utterly ridiculous. And yeah, so I yeah, like there have been a couple times in history where I think did you look up the fact that the Oklahoma City Thunder traded for Tyson Chandler, and they he failed his medical, and so they
Yeah,
rescinded. Yeah,
yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
like there have been times, and there was one recently, right, where somebody failed their
yeah,
medical. Oh yeah, Mark Williams. Duh. Yeah,
Mark.
the Mark Williams Dalton Connect. Yeah, failed his
Yeah,
medical. Yeah, so maybe they were worried about that. Um, so yeah, I that would be a great one to ask Kendra about the specifics of teams failing somebody for their medical or not wanting to trade a player because of their medical. But yeah, I'm guessing Steph's ankles probably held that up, and so they trade Monte Ellis, and the rest is history.
yeah. I mean, I find it really interesting though, because like, what does one staff think that like that they may have concerns, but like the Warriors obviously kept Steph Curry. The Saints signed Drew Brees. Carlos Correa eventually went back to the Twins. Like those three staffs decided that the three injury like the players mentioned like were good enough to still stay on their rosters or something.
Yeah,
But
it's
there,
risk. It's risk assessment. Yeah,
okay,
like yeah, some teams are willing to take a risk on it. Like during the draft course when Ben Falk brought up like how
mhm,
injury sometimes players will be off their board completely because of injury, and other teams
yeah,
won't go that way. Like like Cam Johnson. Do you remember when Cam Johnson was the 11th pick a few years ago? Like, or
mhm,
when Phoenix took Cam Johnson?
yeah,
He was a massive injury red flag. Like he had lots of injuries. He'd had back issues. Like he definitely got flagged. They still took him 11th. They liked him.
yeah,
Like yeah. Like and they took him over Michael Porter Jr., for instance. Yeah.
mhm.
So who
Wow.
also had the back flag and everything like that, and went to 14th, and then those guys end up getting traded for each other, and they both have a risk of injury at any time. Yeah,
Mhm.
but yeah, I think it's how different staffs just view injury, and
Okay.
it's like Oklahoma City will say, well, Tyson Chandler could re-aggravate this injury, so we don't want to take the risk. Whereas, like Dallas reaps the benefits of what it's like to have a healthy Tyson Chandler.
Mhm. Yeah, and then exactly, and the two other things that were related to injuries that I wanted to ask were like, uh, so do you like were there ever any like instances like in your basketball career or like if I'll probably ask like John or Bjorn later, maybe even Kendra too, like where
Ask
you may
Kendra all
have
these, by the way. Yeah.
yeah, obviously, and then like so I wait, sorry. What I'm trying to say is Were there ever any instances where like a player may have wanted to rush back from an injury or something and they didn't pay heed to the advice that you gave them? Like or like what would you do like to try to convince them to stay on like the right path or whatever that be?
Yeah, I don't know if there is such a thing as like, I'm sure there are doctors and medical staff that will give advice for players and have a certain timeline and have certain hopes for them. Where at the same time, if it's game 7 of the NBA finals and they want to play in it, they're going to play in it. And that was what Tyrese Halliburton did. And we saw what happened
Yeah,
there. And,
yeah,
like where I think there have been instances where players have been hurt in NBA finals games where they make it through and do okay. So yeah, I think it depends on that relationship. And I would say also like, like what you're playing for as well. Yeah.
that makes
If,
sense.
if a player is in a contract year and like,
Yeah,
there are injuries, like they're, I bet they're cautious about it. I bet they're
yeah.
very cautious about it. But
Mhm.
yeah, if you're playing in Game 7 of the NBA Finals, like and even with Jason Tatum, with his
Yeah,
calf issue and tearing his Achilles, like that was a crucial game. He was playing in the playoffs, like yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's just too bad.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then also lastly, do you think that enough like do you think the NBA and other like sports organizations like the NFL, MLB, they're doing enough to make sure that all the player injury reports are up completely like updated and stuff so that if there are penalties where like somebody didn't like for example in baseball there were two trades that AJ Preller did for the San Diego Padres where he got penalized like he either got banned like suspended for 30 days due to a trade or because he had to there was like a 5 player trade and he had to trade 2 players back to each other and there were like 2 different type of penalties for not disclosing the proper injury history of a player that he gave up.
yeah.
Do you think like the penalties are fair enough or do you think more needs to be done?
Probably more needs to be done. I honestly I don't know. If like do you remember the Blazers trading Gary Payton second back to Golden State a couple years ago? Where they
Yes.
didn't
Yep.
disclose an injury he had and yeah, like they were I don't know what really came of that, but yeah,
Mm,
they probably could do a lot more about it. Yeah, I really that one I probably shouldn't even answer, but yeah, I would guess they could do more. You could always do more. Yeah, and
gotcha.
like have I don't know, like we'll see with the Clippers also with this whole
Hmm.
whatever it was called, the affinity or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we'll see
Crazy.
how that works out and what the penalty will be there, and like people are talking about like the precedent set with like Joe Smith all those years ago,
Hmm.
um, which by the way, like when you think of Kevin Garnett's last few years with the Wolves, like kind of
Hmm.
screwed over. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's yeah, they probably could do more. I'm guessing. Yeah, like I really don't know. Like, yeah, I think the NBA is trying to be better about that, and like even in the draft process, I think medicals are now available to all teams. But I know for
Okay.
years players were fighting against that. And
Dang.
yeah, do you remember the dietitian last week was talking about
Hmm.
how they only have to do one blood test per year, like that kind of thing.
Right.
Like, yeah,
Right.
I'm sure baseball has some similar things where, they don't necessarily want to um release their entire injury history or anything like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
they probably could do more about it. But
Hmm.
that's a great question for Kendra.
Hmm.
Do you remember?
And yeah, I mean,
Did you ever read about Sam Bowie when he did his
uh,
medicals in Portland?
no, I didn't. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
follow.
Well, like how you test your reflexes, you bang the thing on your knee, and you know
Okay.
you, you kick your foot up and everything like that. And they banged
Yep.
me on his knee, and we're like, "Does it hurt?" And he said no. And they're like, "Okay." Well, he was like, yeah, of course it hurt, but I wasn't gonna tell them that. Like, yeah.
That's true.
The crazy part with Sam Bowie, with
Mhm.
him going second, Michael Jordan,
Mhm.
he missed. So from his sophomore year to
Mhm.
his junior year, he
Mhm.
missed 2 full college seasons. He was in college for
Whoa.
5 years. He
Whoa.
missed 2 full college seasons,
Yeah.
and then came back his junior year, had like a decent year,
Mhm.
and was a center.
Mhm.
And can you imagine that happening nowadays, where a player misses 2 full seasons, comes back, and gets picked second? I can't imagine.
No.
But, different times.
Yeah. I mean, you'd probably be lucky to get drafted at all, if even like, I mean, second overall. No, probably not.
Yeah, yeah, more than what. I would take him probably having trouble getting drafted at all versus being second overall. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, and then baseball is a completely different thing. I mean, I'm trying to like, these were just like things off the top of my head. I thought that Kendra was gonna be here, but at least I will leave these in the chat and stuff. But yeah, they just came to me. I was
Yeah,
thinking
put
like
him in Slack. Put him in Slack. Yeah.
about a lot of
Or
things here.
send it to Kendra in Slack.
Yeah, and even with like baseball stuff, like it's kind of different there too because recently I think I've been hearing things about something called phantom injuries where they'll use like the the IL, they'll just put somebody there even though they're not injured and stuff like that. Imagine that happen in every sport. I mean, it probably does. We don't even know. Like there could be like injuries, or like in baseball, basketball, it would be load management. Like you're just putting a healthy player who could potentially play, just not like resting them for a game and calling it like load management or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And another interesting point, I guess, just from today's conversations, I found the interesting was that like when you're starting out your career, you almost have to be a multitasker to make sure that you're looked at it in a different light by people who are higher up in the organization. But then once you actually reach that spot of where you want to be in your career, then you can't go back downwards. Like you can't just do everything again. You just have to be in that one specialized spot.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's like a certain
True.
point in time where you just can't do everything anymore. But at
Yeah.
the start of the career, you have to.
Yeah. You're fighting for your job. But I think that's the big thing in the NBA. You're constantly fighting to provide value. Yeah. So yeah, like you're trying to do whatever you can for them to want to keep you on with the team. And then as soon as you do find your spot, like Johnny found with the front office,
Yeah.
he didn't want to take a step back to his old job, Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, makes a lot of sense. And like, with Brett being like, yeah, I'm not so sure I know how to work a VCR. I'm sorry. Like, yeah, like, I remember Johnny saying like when he started, he was the tech guy because all these people didn't know how to work anything. So anytime something was broken, they would ask him. And I think after a while, you don't want to do that anymore. You're too busy doing your work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks again. And yeah, I mean, it's been great.
No problem,
Like
man.
even the phone call that we had, the personal stuff that we got to talk about it
Absolutely.
during the NBA draft course and stuff. I loved it. So I'm just
Good.
glad that I get to come back to these courses every year.
Absolutely. Good seeing you, brother.
Yeah.
And yeah, dude, anytime you have draft questions, hit me up. But yeah, like we were saying a couple weeks ago, like just there's no one tool. Like I know you were looking for like the one formula.
Yeah.
No, man, it's all these things blended together. You try and use every resource you can. Like and I think that's the big thing in the NBA, like that nobody has a formula that's gotten every single draft pick right.
Right.
You need a lot of you first off, that's why they have staffs full of people scouting and have all those voices in the room. Because you really can't see everything. And sometimes it's good to have somebody else's perspective on it and somebody who may know a little bit more about a player.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. Thank you.
Buddy.
I'll see you.
Well, yeah, we'll see you at the next one.
Yeah.
All right. Later, buddy.